Welcome to Unity Talks, where the hiring experts of Dallas-based recruiting firm Unity Search engage in lively discussion with successful business leaders to dissect their careers and how they got to where they are today, the obstacles overcome to reach their success, and steps they've taken to stay at the top of their respective fields. So listen in as we provide you with the thought-provoking conversation and ideas that keep industries moving forward.
And welcome back to the next edition of the Unity Talks podcast. I'm your host, David Cathy, where we meet with guests that are primarily in the field of accounting, finance, tax, human resources, and technology in DFW to talk about how they got to where they're at in their career and how they stay there. And I think this might be one of the first times I've mentioned human resources. And it's because we didn't have human resources a year ago. And now we do. And we've had it for this past year. Sorry, McKinsey, I haven't been mentioning it, but I'm mentioning it now. Okay, so our guest today is none other than Dart Budz, the CFO of Newrez. Dart, how you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, welcome to the show. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so here's the crazy thing. We're gonna start off. His name is Dart Budz, B-U-D-Z.
Yeah.
And I thought I would start by making sure that people knew where the name Dart came from, because I was trying to put myself in the shoes of the listener today. And I thought, man, if I hear the name Dart Budz and then they just keep rolling on with the rest of the show, I'm going to still be hung up at minute 25 going, like, who names their kid Dart? Yeah. So you got to tell us the story first.
Well, it does keep some of the telemarketing down, because people say Dart and then they try to pronounce my last name all kinds of crazy ways, right? So I am one of three. I have two brothers. I'm the middle one, as you can tell when I talk a lot, because I didn't get to talk as a child much. My older brother, his name is Adam, super normal name. There were three on the block growing up. So my parents decided we're going to give him unusual names. So Dart comes from D'Artagnan, which is Three Musketeers. And then my little brother got Tristan, which everybody is named Tristan.
It's a cool name now.
So everybody knows that. I'm the only one that kind of sticks out. So
yeah.
That's where we got Dart from, because if you looked at the spelling of D'Artagnan, it would, boggle your mind, and so you wouldn't be able to pronounce it.
Well, and here's the crazy thing. As we were walking up here today, you said, oh yeah, I was working at a bank, just kind of a new job, trying to look for my entry-level job. And this is crazy. What happens?
Yeah, so doing customer service, a lady calls in, I say, hey, blah, blah, bank, and I'm Dart, how can I help you? And she said, Dart, is that short for anything? And I said, yes, it's short for D'Artagnan. And she said, my husband's name is D'Artagnan, and so is my son's name. And as I told David, I immediately said, why did your husband do that to your son? That's a tough name to go through life with, And I told them the other thing is, now it works out really well in business. People remember my name. They remember meeting me and stuff. But third grade was tough, because the first thing that comes to mind when you say the word Dart and try to rhyme something is not always a pleasant experience.
Yeah. I'm blown away that you would be on the phone with someone that has a husband named Dart and a kiddo named Dart. I've never met anybody with the name Dart until a few days ago.
Yeah, and it wasn't a French bank or anything.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It was a Chicagoland bank.
Exactly.
So it was definitely it was the first time I'd ever talked to somebody named
that
Dart.
had your name.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. So we've put that to bed so we can actually move on with the rest of the podcast, and we can hopefully have your attention. Okay, I start out every podcast asking our guests, just give us a 2-minute commercial on Newrez that you're the CFO of. So what does Newrez do? Who are they?
So Newrez, we say we're the biggest mortgage company you haven't heard of. So we have the second largest servicing portfolio outside of the banks, and we're the fifth largest loan originator. So we work across, so a lot of people, they're brokers and stuff, we buy loans from them. So we do everything soup to nuts in the mortgage business, and we have 5,500 employees, about 800 here in the DFW area, and then primary offices outside of Philly, Houston, Greenville. And then our parent company is New York based. It's a smaller REIT, but that's what we do, soup to nuts mortgage lending.
Love
and
it.
Service our customers.
Love it. And Dart is he just got back in from Austin. He's fixing to go to New York, so he is all over the place. And as you might learn in this podcast, he was like that on the early part of his career as well. So he is very well versed in moving across the U.S., which we'll probably get into a little bit. So the topic today is mindful career decisions. I mean, that's what you and I spent a lot of time talking about. And we've had a couple of other guests on the show that have talked about mindful career decisions, and they've taken a little bit of a different avenue. Some of them blend in, but there've been a little different avenue. The three subtitles in yours would be, what is your career mission statement? Okay. Do you have a mentor, and who that mentor is, and does it change? And then networking, always network for your career. So let's kind of start with mindful career decisions in general before we jump into kind of these three tiers. What do you mean when you say mindful career decisions?
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of people are looking at a title or a pay amount or something that is financial or based on where they are in their career. And I think there's a lot of things you can learn from different opportunities that maybe they're lateral moves, maybe they're actually going down a tier to get you where you eventually want to go. So when we talk about career statement, I think that's what is really important, because opportunities are always put out there in front of people. And if you don't have that career statement that's really driving your focus, it's really hard to see that this opportunity is going to help you in the long run versus taking some short-term gains.
Yeah, okay, I see where you're going with that then. And so, well, I guess let me ask you this. Have you made, because everybody does think when I make that next move, it's going to be for more money and it's going to be a higher level position. And I've always thought, and I've actually advised people of this, the further you get along in your career, the harder that becomes. Because there is only one CFO spot in an organization, right? And there aren't 6 CFOs that go to the next one. And so there are times in your career where you are going to be making laterals, particularly the higher you go. But you're even saying, hey, you might be making a lateral move or a step down earlier in your career if you began with the end in mind. Is that right?
Sure. And that's when I moved, and you alluded to the number of moves that we've done a little bit, living in Charlotte, working for Bank of America, large Fortune 50 bank, and just didn't see as many opportunities future. And so we took an opportunity to move to Boston, work for a smaller bank. I got more responsibility. Boston's a little bit more expensive to live in than Charlotte. So when you looked at from a comp perspective and our standard of living, it actually went down in making this move, not to mention the weather in the winter time in Boston was a lot worse than it is in Charlotte. But we made this move intentionally knowing that it gave me access to look at a wide variety of products, lead a larger team, which was something I was really looking for at the time. I thought I did a good job of motivating and encouraging individuals. So I wanted to see that on a larger scale. And so the opportunity I took, I had a nice, comfortable career at a big, stable financial institution at the time. And we took this opportunity to move to Boston and brought my family along with for the ride.
Yeah.
And it ended up being, one of the stops that really has gotten me to this place.
That's such a great perspective to have, because I would imagine, correct me if I'm wrong here, it wasn't, if you were going to have a career mission statement, and we'll talk about what that specifically means to you, but I'm going to use it as an example now. If you had a career mission statement, it may ultimately have been, I want to be the CFO of an X size company or revenue dollars company, whatever that is. And the move to Boston wasn't to achieve that specific goal. It was on the path to achieve the goal you wanted.
Yeah, and I'll say this. My career goal has never been to be CFO.
Okay.
And I never define it that way, and I don't say I want to manage this many people or, as you said, revenue or make X amount of dollars. I always said I wanted to empower executives to make good financial decisions. So a lot of my career has been spent in FP&A, more so than I'm sure a lot of the guests that you have a stronger accounting background than I do. But I've always looked for the opportunity to help them make good financial decisions. And you can do that in a wide variety of roles. It doesn't have to be that title dictates the position. You can be that trusted advisor for your business partner, no matter where you sit within the organization, and finding those business partners that you want to really partner with and that are a good fit for you is how I've looked through my career that's gotten me to this point.
Yeah, that's really good. So how do you begin creating a mission statement? What's the first step?
Yeah. Write it down. That's the first. So I think a lot of times you'll see people and they'll write a mission statement and it'll be like something that you mentioned. I want to be the CFO. And to me, that's a little bit hard to do because there's only so many opportunities to do that. So as I told you, one of my old mission statements being that help and empower executives, it's a little bit more thoughtful in what you want to do on a day-to-day basis and what you want to do throughout your career. And so you're not limited by the job title and you say, oh, I failed because I didn't get to this seat, they hired somebody else, or that person's, there for 50 years. And so I've really focused that career mission statement on the things that I want to do, whether it's personally, whether it's for the people that work with me, around me, or whether it's for the organization itself, and how do I help engage those individuals and the company.
Yeah, I think having a career mission statement is such a valuable thing. How did you come up with that? Like, did someone tell you? Is it just like you're a savant and you're like, this is what I'm going to do?
You can read it in my book. I haven't written.
Okay, all right.
No, and so I think for me, as I was a little bit earlier in my career, and I would get to places and I would hear from people, Dart, you're doing a great job, and hey, you're going to get promoted, and the opportunities, in order to get promoted to manager, director, senior director, VP, et cetera, it's really an availability question. And so just being good at what you do wasn't enough. And so really what I started to focus on is, what was my career goal? Where did I want to be? Who did I want to be? And then I looked at my career a little differently, especially when I was at an analyst or a manager level. And it really shaped my decision making differently than I would have if I would have said, oh, I'm only taking this job because they're going to pay me more, or it comes with a better title, or something, reserved parking or something like that. And so for me, really being in some of these situations where upward mobility wasn't available at the time, it made me look for a more purposeful career choice.
How many, two-part question, how many career mission statements have you had, and how often do you edit, review? Because a lot of people will write down goals and they see it one time, the time they write it down, and then it's gone and it's out of mind.
Yeah, so I'm big on at least once a year, when you're writing your New Year's resolutions that you may or may not stick to. I also like to look at things during that time. And actually, you mentioned I drove back from Austin last night, and you had sent me what your mission statement was. And I looked at what I had emailed you earlier in the day, and I was like, oh, I have to rethink this. And I've got to come up with something better. And I had a 3-hour drive to think about it. But I do think that it's something, when you get to this time of year and you're doing year-end reviews with your managers and things like that, that really engages you into the thoughtfulness of thinking about where you want to be and where you want to go. So I think this time of year is a great time to kind of take that and think about those things and write down where you want to go. And if you do that before you have your year-end conversations, I also think that helps you with your manager end-of-year reviews, so you can really kind of decide what direction to take some of those goals for the next year.
Yeah, but Dart, I think the career mission statement is critical. I didn't have one early in my career. I probably got one when I was in my mid 30s.
Sure.
And I thought, man, I really need some like a guiding light for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found was so challenging, it's still challenging to this day, and I'm a little bit better at it now, is if you write it and then it's out of sight, it truly is out of mind.
Mm-hmm.
And you forget. And I'm like, oh, I want to memorize this. I'm going to live by this every single day, but we're human. And the day gets away from you, just like you have a plan every single day to accomplish whatever. And by 10 o'clock, your plan is shot. Your day is completely different. And that happens with our mission statement. So I feel like it needs to be in a document, or it needs to be the screensaver on a computer, or you have some trigger words that help you go, oh yeah, this is my true north.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point, and it's easy to have it, put it on a piece of paper, tuck it away, as you said. And I think especially when you get to certain points in your career, it's easy to forget about it. You know, when you sit there and think about, okay, what am I going to accomplish? What am I going to do next? What's going to keep me motivated? And I think if you looked at my laptop, and there's a lot of things like pasted and taped Chinese fortunes and things like a mission statement, just so that when you open your laptop in the morning, you're able to see that, and just it recenters you and refocuses you a lot of times, because as you said, the day, the week, the month, it gets away from you so quickly sometimes. And so if every day you're opening your laptop and seeing that, it really forces you to think through some of the decisions you have during your day.
Man, that's so good. That is so good. That's gold. All right, we're going to move on to the next one, mentorship. Like, how did you get mentors?
Yeah, so I was fortunate, especially early in my career, to work for larger Fortune 50 companies that really had established mentorship programs. And so I'm very fortunate in that respect, where they would pair you with somebody and you could really learn what that looked like early on in my career. And then as I went through my career, I've switched and changed mentors just based on where I was and what I was looking for. So early in my career, when I made a shift career-wise, I just finished studying for the CPA, sat for the CPA. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I was working at Lowe's Home Improvement in their finance department. I was working with the buyer, so it was one of those great jobs where you would do an analysis and then you can see it in the stores the next day. And so you could say, wow, I can really feel and touch what I'm doing. And I had one of the buyers said, okay, if you want to be a buyer, you can stay here and continue down this path. But if you want to use that and your diplomas and things like that, you should look at financial services. And, things like that. I'm blessed that along the way, I've had people that have been very direct with me on career decisions like that. I'm lucky that my dad was in financial services for 30 years. So I call him up. He always tells me that he's glad he's not managing people today, but that's a different podcast for a different day. And then I just have some people that I've met along the way. And at this point, where I really turn to is I talk to people that aren't financial professionals. So I like to talk to CEOs or COOs or chief strategy officers. So people that are really in the business, salespeople, just to get a feel of how they're thinking about and looking at things, more so than finance people at this juncture.
Did you, is the mentors that you've always, has it been formal? Is it like, how would, if I'm an employee at a small company, a small company's not going to have a mentor program. So how do you go about getting a mentor?
Sure. And I think one of the biggest advantages that people have today is LinkedIn. And so when you have your mission statement and you think about what you're really interested in doing and how to achieve that, what's great about LinkedIn is you can go and see what content people post. And you can find those people that share your vision or have gone in those footsteps. And so it's not geographically limited like it used to be. And what you'll find, especially on LinkedIn, if you're not trying to sell somebody something within 3 minutes of meeting them, is people are open and happy to help people along the journey, because everybody that's sitting in a position that's talking to you had help and guidance along the journey. You know, they didn't just fall into the seat for the most part. And so, you know, there's really a culture of paying it back. And when you look on LinkedIn and you see the people that are posting about things like that, you reach out to them and they're happy to dialogue, have a conversation, email, text. So I think there's a lot that people can do just engaging with that platform and finding those groups. There's also, you know, obviously a lot of networking groups and stuff like that in every city that you're in. That's also a good way to meet people and see where they're at in their careers.
Yeah. Well, it's going to take effort.
Yes.
You have to be willing to, and if you have to be willing to sign up to do the effort to find the mentor if your company doesn't have a program. And if you don't want to put the effort in, you probably don't want a mentor, or that relationship's going to go south pretty quickly, because to be a mentor from someone or for someone, you want to see them taking the action on the things that you're advising, or really absorbing it and contemplating what the next move is for their career. And if you're not going to take the action on trying to identify a mentor, you're probably not going to take the action on the advice that the mentor is giving you. And that's just going to lead to frustration.
Absolutely. And I think the key is you have to think about it as part of your job. If you have this mission statement, doing a good job isn't necessarily going to lead you to the C-suite. You have to have those other career defining points along the way. And so finding those mentors, you have to think about it. And when we get to the next subject, same point. You have to do the work. You have to think about it as part of your career. And it's as important as the day-to-day stuff that you have to excel at.
Yeah. Okay. I have one more thing on mentor before we move on to this next one. You know, I've often said I've had mentors and the people didn't know that they were my mentors, because those people could be authors of books or people that I listen to for podcasts that I'm trying to really listen to, and I want to go deep with them. So I'm going to read every book written by this author, right? And I'm going to start living to some of those values as long as it aligns with your career mission statement. The thing that I'm curious of your opinion, I think at times, sometimes it's really hard for you to think that your mentor is also your direct boss, because I think sometimes it can blend. Like when you're the direct boss, you should want the best for your employees, but you're always in their ear, right? In a good way. You're always talking to them. And I feel like sometimes it's really good to have another voice that's not your direct boss talking to you, as opposed to, well, that's just David, and David's always saying these things, so right. I'm not going to listen to it that much.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on like a direct boss, and that direct boss is also the mentor? Like, do you feel that that's challenging?
I do, because I think you need that outside perspective. You know, if my wife tells me something 3 times and then I go and find somebody else that tells me the same thing, and then I make that decision to do what my wife told me, right? Sometimes you just need that other voice in your head. And I think the other thing that people need to consider when you think about a mentor, I think a lot of people think looking for somebody that's either older or has been in this profession longer, or has they're higher up on the food chain than they are. And I don't think that that's necessarily what you need to look at and for. You're looking for people that have either gone through kind of that career spot that you're in, or can help you think through some of those challenges. And then I think the biggest thing, and this is why direct managers, they provide a lot of feedback.
Yep.
And, you know, it's finding that person that's going to give you honest feedback. and not just tell you what you want to hear. And that sometimes is challenging because we go and we look and we try to find the person that's going to make us feel good at the end of the day versus help us get to the spot we want to and are able to achieve.
Man, I think that last part's so good. If you want a mentor, everything that we just said, but I want to highlight that last part. You as the mentee need to be open to receive critical feedback. And that's really hard to do because we naturally, for the most part, want to get defensive and put up a boundary and defend our territory. But for people that want to grow, like they want critical feedback.
Absolutely.
You know, they seek it out. And I think you really have to turn that switch in your mind. The last one that we have of being mindful of career decisions, and these all build on each other, is networking. So explain to us what you mean about networking.
Yeah, and I think it goes along with mentoring a lot. And as I said, this is also something you have to be very mindful and think about it as a job. So the difference here is finding people at various levels, various companies, various places that you can go and engage with. You know, sometimes you need people that you're just blowing off steam with. Mm-hmm. There are times where you need somebody that you can really ask difficult questions of. There are times you just need to engage and find people that do something similar to you, but not at your company. And so I think networking is very critical, especially as you think about job search and careers and things like that. And how many items don't get posted? They're either going through recruiting firms, or it's, well, I know somebody, or we're doing a quiet search, and you never know where that next opportunity is going to come from, or that's going to meet what you're looking for. And so networking and knowing as many of those people as possible really helps you along the way in achieving your goals.
Yeah. I think networking, I'm going to say this, I hate saying this, post-COVID, has really gone down.
Yeah.
I think it's making a resurgence, because I think people are at a point in time now where it's like, man, I just kind of want to get out and go see people. Oh, we're doing this whole thing. We're gathering here. And I know we're 4 years removed, and trust me, I can't stand like saying post-COVID. Right. But I really think it's seeing a resurgence, and I really do think there's so much value to someone's career if they just get out and talk to and meet. And it doesn't have to be, you're a finance guy. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be just with finance and accounting people. It's not just finance and accounting people that could find your next right opportunity.
Absolutely.
It's other people in other disciplines and other careers and other industries that you can get so much value of.
Yeah, and I think, and this will probably make me sound old, right? I understand you can have those networking, the relationships. My son can text his friends and not see them for 6 months, and they can be super close. The power of being in person is so helpful, whether it's grabbing a coffee, going out to lunch, dinner, what have you. It's so powerful to sit across from somebody, have a conversation, understand what you're going through, what they're going through. And as you said, especially as you're looking, if you're looking and your goals are to climb a career ladder, a lot of times the people that are going to introduce you or open up those opportunities are the people on the business side. They're the salespeople, the ops people that their finance or accounting partner left. Mm. And because they want to work hand in hand with the finance and accounting, well, most of them do.
Yeah.
Those are the people that are going to say, hey, I know this person, or I know this person, and this person's great. And that's going to lead to those opportunities because they know what you're like in those social settings. Mm-hmm. And so they're not worried about what are you going to say in a meeting that's going to make me look bad, or, hey, this person doesn't know what they're doing, and things like that. So I think finding people across other disciplines than just finance, accounting, or whatever career path you're on is huge to finding those opportunities.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it from the perspective of they already know what you're like in a social setting, and so they'll recommend you, because they know that you're not going to make them look bad. I have not thought of it from that perspective, but that's actually really good. I heard it once said that, and I don't know who said this, but everything you want in life is on the other side of a person, right? And so it's just, you got to go find that person, and then you got to network with that person, or you got to develop a relationship with that person. And there's always something on the other side, whether it's you've learned something new, or there's the next person or another job, right? There's so much value in meeting people. And I think if we can continue to network, especially when you're mindful of your career decisions, and you go through this, I've got a mission statement that I want to achieve, and I want to begin with the end in mind. And it doesn't mean that if I write my end at 23 years old, it's the same ending when I reach 25 or 30 or 35. Because we can all change our mind. I mean, I was a finance guy and I got out of it, and I have my toe in the finance water for recruiting on it, but I'm not the guy that is good at doing that finance job, and I knew that wasn't for my career. And so my mission statement would have changed at that point in time.
Yeah, and I think that's key, because when you asked me that earlier, the key thing for me now is, okay, I'm the CFO. What's my mission statement here, right? And it's, there's the one that I have for the company, and it's about empowering and making good decisions. But the other thing that I'm in this transitionary spot where I'm looking and I'm saying, maybe I want to lead a company at some point. And if I go that direction, then hey, I have to rethink a lot of these things, right? And then all of a sudden I have to go get the mentors to do that and things like that. So, one is, hey, there's a little bit more comfort doing what you know and what you've been doing your entire career. But there's also things where you say, hey, I see how other people are doing this. I think I can do a good job being this person or that person. And so you go and find those people that can help you think through that and say, is this the right place, or do you stay here? Yeah,
it's so good. Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to change the direction of your career, one of the first moves needs to be networking. And what is it like in that career path? What are those types of companies like? Do I like large companies, small companies? Who do you know? And I think that's so valuable. On the networking too, so many people have talked about this, and I remember ending a podcast going, God, man, you're the guest. I was like, God, you're such a good connector. And I thought that was such a great title for someone to have. Like, I'm a connector. I want to connect you with this person over here.
Interesting.
And in the end, if I do that enough, if it was just purely from a selfish standpoint, I'll benefit from it. But when you become a connector, you never do that from a selfish standpoint. You do that because, man, I like you and I think you got a lot of value. And I like you and I think, and y'all two need to talk because there's going to be synergies, and I want to just put y'all together and then I'm out. But that comes back to you. And the point we made earlier about that mission statement always needing to be written down, when I was listening to you talk about networking, I was like, oh my gosh, what happened to me being a better connector? I wanted to do that. Where did that go? And it's just life gets in the way.
It is. And then when you think about networking and you think about people that you've engaged with in your career that maybe a business partner that went somewhere else, and I think when you look at that and it's like, oh, we keep in touch, and then it drifts off, and then, 6 months you send a text or a holiday card, and then it's gone, right? Yeah. And a lot of times you just never know where you need that connection again. And so, as you said, keep in touch with those people that touched you throughout your career. And there's a lot of business partners that I've worked with through the years that if they call me up, I'm like, this person's fantastic, and I'm going to find you somebody that's really going to fit for you just because you were a fantastic business partner 5, 10, 15 years ago. And I want to see you successful, and I think this person can help you be successful if I know somebody that's there as well, and vice versa. So I think it's very important to keep up with the connections. As you said, I'm not always as good at that as I'd like to be. And preparing for this podcast actually made me reach back out to people that I probably had let drift a little bit more because I wanted to make sure when I came on here, I was kind of
speaking
walking
the truth.
yes,
Yeah.
right, and actually walking the walk a little bit. So
Well, I mean, we're gonna end it on that because I think that's huge. I mean, this is reaching out to people and reconnecting with them. The only thing that's stopping you from doing that is you. There's nothing else
100%.
that's stopping you from doing that.
100%.
And the chances are greater than 90% the person that's on the receiving end of that email or LinkedIn message or text message or whatever it is going to welcome it. It's just swallowing that pill and being humble enough to go, hey man, I wanted to reconnect with you. How are you? And we prevent ourselves from doing that.
yes, and you're like, well, it's been too long, and you're 100% right that people reach back out and they're, hey, what are you doing? Where have you been? And things like that. So I 100% agree when it comes to that networking. That's a good first step, is to go back to some of those other people that maybe you lost some connectivity to and re-engage with them and see what they've been up to the last couple of years.
We're going to end it on that. Usually I ask the guests, what is the one thing someone can do beginning tomorrow? But I'm going to say, here are the two things that you should do tomorrow. Number one, if you don't already have a career mission statement, write it down. And there's something about seeing a goal or a mission statement written on a piece of paper with your own handwriting. I'm not talking about making a note in your phone or typing it into your computer. Actually go through the physical process of seeing your own handwriting on a piece of paper. You can then transfer it to something else where you're mindful of and tape it on your computer, which I think is great. But I would start with that. The second thing I would do is, you didn't even have to be new. Start reconnecting with people that are mentors or great connections and become that connector. Put the onus on you to reignite that relationship. So I'm going to go ahead and say that that's the two things that people need to begin doing tomorrow. Dart, it was fantastic having you on the podcast today.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm glad I didn't have to answer the hardest question.
What's the hardest question?
The one at the
last one?
end,
Come
because
on.
I was like not prepared.
That's not the hardest question. You would have aced it already because you went through and already gave it to everybody. But I loved what you said, and thanks for adding so much value to our audience. We really appreciate it.
Thanks. I loved being here.
Yeah. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us. We have these every other week. We hope that you gain a lot of value out of it. I know I sure do. It's not just for me, it's for everybody else. And if you could forward this podcast along for someone else that you think would benefit from it, please do. And until next time.
If you're looking for the next step in your career or the missing piece for your team, Unity Search has you covered. Whether it's finance and accounting, tax services, information technology, or human resources, Unity Search is here for you with experienced and dedicated hiring professionals. Reach out today and take the next step. Unity Search, placing you first.